Commander Sarah Chun walked through the curved corridors of Nexus Station with steady steps. Her blue diplomatic uniform was crisp and clean. Behind her, 3 other humans followed. They were tired but hopeful. 5 days of talking with the Valethians had finally brought results. Today, they would sign the peace treaty. The station floated in orbit above Meridian 7, a brown and green planet that nobody owned. For 200 years, species from across the galaxy had met here to talk instead of fight. The walls were white and smooth. Soft lights glowed from the ceiling. Through the windows, stars shone like diamonds on black cloth. Sarah had been a soldier before she became a diplomat. She knew war. She had seen friends die in the border conflicts with the Valethians over the past 3 years. Small battles, nothing major. Both sides had lost ships and people. But both sides had also agreed that a full war would cost too much. So they came here to make peace. The Valethians were tall creatures with 4 arms and smooth gray skin. Their eyes were large and black, showing no emotion that humans could read. They came from 3 different worlds but worked together as the Valethian collective. Their technology was better than human technology. Their fleets were bigger. But humans were stubborn and refused to back down from their colonies. Lieutenant James Kovac walked beside Sarah. He was young, only 26, with nervous energy that he tried to hide. This was his first diplomatic mission. He carried a datapad with the treaty terms written in both languages. "Do you think they'll really keep the peace?" Kovac asked quietly. Sarah glanced at him. "They agreed to every major point. They get the core systems. We keep our outer colonies. Nobody loses face. Nobody has to keep bleeding." She paused. "Yes, I think they want peace as much as we do." They entered the main chamber. It was a huge round room with a high ceiling. Hundreds of seats rose in circles around a central platform. Representatives from a dozen species watched from those seats. Everyone wanted to see if humans and Valethians could end their conflict without more death. The Valethian delegation waited on the platform. High Commander Zareth stood in the center, his 4 arms held in a position that meant respect in his culture. Around him, 6 other Valethians waited. All wore the dark purple uniforms of their military. This had bothered Sarah at first. She had expected civilian diplomats. But the Valethians explained that in their culture, only warriors could make promises about war and peace. Sarah and Zareth approached each other. They had spent days together, arguing over star maps and trade routes. They had found compromise. Now they would make it official. "Commander Chun," Zareth said in his clicking, multi-tone voice. A translator device around his neck turned his words into English. "Today we end the bloodshed between our peoples. Today we choose a better future," Sarah replied. She had practiced her response. It sounded good. It sounded like peace. They moved to a table at the center of the platform. The treaty document sat there, displayed on a holoscreen that floated in the air. Both leaders would touch the screen with their biological signatures. The document would be locked and legal. The chamber was silent. Sarah could feel hundreds of eyes watching. She thought about the human colonies that could now grow without fear. She thought about the families who would not lose loved ones to war. She thought about her own daughter back on Earth, who could grow up in peace. Sarah pressed her hand to the screen. It glowed blue and scanned her. Zareth pressed 2 of his hands to it. It glowed purple. The treaty was signed. Applause filled the chamber. Not cheering, but the slow, respectful clapping of diplomats who understood what this meant. Sarah felt relief wash through her body. They had done it. Peace. She turned away from the table. She wanted to shake hands with her team, to tell them they had succeeded. Kovac was smiling. The other 2 diplomats looked ready to cry with joy. The plasma bolt hit Sarah in the middle of her back. There was no sound at first, just a bright flash of green light. Sarah's body jerked forward. Her eyes went wide with shock. She looked down and saw the front of her uniform burning. A hole had been punched through her chest. She could see her own blood, bright red against the blue fabric. She fell to her knees. The chamber erupted in screams and shouts. Kovac caught her as she collapsed, lowering her gently to the platform floor. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. Her eyes found his face. There was a question in them. Why? Sarah Chun died there, on the platform where she had just signed peace. Her eyes stayed open, staring at nothing. Kovac looked up. He saw a Vilethian officer holding a plasma rifle. The alien was not running. He was not hiding. He stood calmly, his weapon still raised. Around him, other Vilethian soldiers had drawn weapons too. They pointed them at the watching crowd, at the human delegation, at everyone. "Secure all exits," Zareth commanded in his own language. The translator still worked. Everyone heard him. "Detain the human delegates. Jam all communications from this station." Kovac's mind could not process what was happening. This was a trap. This had always been a trap. They had never wanted peace. Vilethian soldiers grabbed him. He fought, but they were stronger. They dragged him and the other two humans toward a side door. Kovac looked back at Sarah's body lying alone on the platform. Her blood was spreading slowly across the white floor. Why? Kovac shouted at Zareth. "We signed the treaty. We came in peace." Zareth's large black eyes turned to look at him. For a moment, something like satisfaction showed in the alien's posture. "You humans mistake our patience for weakness," Zareth said. "You think because we negotiate, we fear you. We do not fear you. We have been waiting for you to lower your guard." Your commander was so eager for peace. She forgot that peace only works when both sides honor it. He gestured to his soldiers. "We honor only strength." The soldiers pulled Kovac through the door. The last thing he saw was Sarah's body being covered with a white cloth. Then the door sealed shut with a hiss of pressure locks in cells deep in the station. Kovac and the others were thrown into darkness. Through the walls, they could hear alarms beginning to sound. They could hear ships launching. They could hear the beginning of war. Sarah Chun had come to make peace. The Vilethians had shot her in the back. And now, humanity would learn what had happened to their diplomat and their trust. The galaxy was about to learn what humans did to those who betrayed them. The message reached Earth 36 hours after Sarah Chun died. It was not an official report. It was not a clean diplomatic statement. It was a broken transmission that Lieutenant Kovac had managed to send before the Vilethians caught him. They killed her. Trap. Shot Commander Chun during the signing. All planned. They're attacking. Then static. Then nothing. Admiral Marcus Webb was in his office at Earth Defense Command when they played him the recording. He listened to it 3 times. His face showed nothing, but his hands gripped the edge of his desk so hard his knuckles turned white. Sarah Chun had been his student 20 years ago. He had taught her tactics and strategy at the military academy. He had watched her grow from an eager young officer into one of humanity's best diplomats. He had recommended her for this mission because he trusted her skill and her judgment, and the Vilethians had killed her while she smiled and believed in peace. "How long until we have confirmation?" Webb asked. His voice was quiet and cold. The intelligence officer in front of him swallowed nervously. "We sent probes to Nexus Station, sir. They were destroyed before they could dock. We're picking up Vilethian military transmissions across 6 sectors. They're mobilizing their full fleet. Our colonies? New Hebron, Sanctuary, and Perth Station all report Vilethian warships entering their systems. No shots fired yet, but they're taking attack positions." Webb stood up slowly. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and scars from 3 different wars. He had hoped he was done with war. He had supported the peace talks. He had believed, like Sarah, that they could find a better way. That hope died with her. "Sound General Alert," Webb said. "Recall all fleet units to defensive positions. Get me the Security Council. And get me every ship we have that can mount a weapon." The intelligence officer hesitated. "Sir, if we mobilize, the Valethians might see it as an act of aggression." Webb looked at him with eyes like ice. "They already acted. They shot a diplomat in the back during a peace ceremony. There is no greater act of aggression. Now move." Across human space, the word spread like fire. At first, people could not believe it. A commander shot during a treaty signing? It had to be a mistake. Some terrible misunderstanding. But then the attacks began. Valethian warships opened fire on human colonies. They targeted defense stations first, trying to blind the humans. They sent landing troops to the surface of New Hebron, the largest human agricultural colony. They jammed communications and destroyed satellites. On New Hebron, colonist Maria Santos watched from her farm as dropships fell from the sky like metal rain. She had 3 children and a husband who worked in the mines. She had moved here 5 years ago to build a peaceful life far from Earth's crowded cities. She grabbed her rifle from the cabinet. It was old, meant for scaring away the local wildlife, but it would shoot. She kissed her children and told them to hide in the basement shelter. Then she joined her neighbors on the road. 200 farmers and miners stood together, watching the alien soldiers march toward their town. They knew they could not win. The Valethians had armor and plasma weapons and air support, but they also knew that someone had to slow them down. Someone had to give the children time to hide. "They think we'll just surrender," Maria said to the man beside her. His name was Chun. No relation to the commander, but he felt the name like a weight today. "They think we'll be scared. Are you scared?" Chun asked. "Terrified," Maria admitted. "But I'm angrier." The Valethians opened fire first. The colonists fired back. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. But the colonists held that road for 43 minutes. 43 minutes for their children to hide. 43 minutes for the emergency beacon to reach the nearest human patrol ship. 43 minutes to show the Valethians that even human farmers would fight to the death. Maria Santos died on that road. So did Chun and most of the others. But the Valethian commander sent a report back to his superiors that worried them. The report said that the humans had not run, had not begged, had not even tried to negotiate. They had just fought until they died. This was not the response the Valethians had expected. Back on Earth, Admiral Webb stood before the United Nations Security Council. The chamber was packed. Representatives from every nation and every major colony watched him. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of translation devices. "They believed we would surrender," Webb said. His voice carried to every corner of the room. "They believed that killing Commander Chun and striking fast would break our spirit. They believed that humanity would accept peace at any price, even the price of our dignity." He paused. On the screen behind him, Sarah Chun's official portrait appeared. She was smiling in the photo. Below it, text scrolled showing the names of the colonists who had died defending their homes. "They were wrong," Webb continued. "Commander Chun went to them with an open hand. They shot her in the back. Our colonists stood with farming tools and old rifles against armored soldiers. They fought anyway. This is who we are. This is what they have awakened." A representative from the European Union spoke up. "Admiral, what are you proposing? A counterattack? A rescue mission?" Webb's expression was carved from stone. "I'm proposing we show them what happens when you betray humanity's trust. I'm proposing we teach them that shooting us in the back means facing us from the front. I'm proposing war." The vote was unanimous. Within hours, Every human warship received new orders. Military factories that had been scheduled to close went to full production. Retired soldiers were called back to service. Scientists were pulled from peaceful research and told to find ways to hurt the Letheans. Humanity had spent decades trying to be better, trying to be peaceful, trying to be diplomatic. The Valethians had mistaken all of that for weakness. Now, they would learn the difference between choosing peace and being unable to wage war. Admiral Webb sent a message on all frequencies, in all languages. He knew the Valethians would hear it. He wanted them to. You had Commander Sarah Chun at your mercy. You shot her in the back during a peace ceremony. You thought this would break us. You thought we would beg for mercy. You thought wrong. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was colder than the space between stars. We gave you our hand in peace. You spat on it. We offered you trust. You answered with treachery. So now you will see what humans do to those who betray us. You wanted war. You're about to learn that humans have been very, very good at war for a very long time. We just chose not to show you. Another pause. You shot her in the back, Valethians. Now face us from the front. The message ended. Across human space, ships began to move. They moved with purpose and terrible speed. They moved toward Valethian territory like a storm that had been building for too long. The Valethians had thought they were fighting a species of peaceful diplomats and scattered colonists. They had thought the humans were soft because they preferred to talk. They were about to discover that preferring peace is not the same as being incapable of war. They were about to face humans who were no longer restraining themselves. Humans who had been betrayed. Humans who were angry. The long night had begun. And when the dawn came, the galaxy would look very different. The first real battle happened at the Ross 128 system, 3 weeks after Sarah Chun's death. A Valethian fleet of 40 warships waited there, expecting to ambush a human supply convoy. Instead, they found Admiral Webb's entire battle group. The Valethians had superior shields and better energy weapons. They had more ships. By every calculation, they should have won. But calculations did not account for Rage. Captain Yuki Tanaka commanded the destroyer Relentless. She had lost her brother on New Hebron during the initial attacks. When the Valethians opened fire, she did not order evasive maneuvers. She ordered full speed ahead. All power to forward shields, she commanded. Weapons free. Target their flagship. Her crew did not hesitate. They had all lost someone. They all knew what the Valethians had done at Nexus Station. The Relentless charged straight into the enemy formation, taking hits that made the entire ship shake. Alarms screamed. Hull breaches opened to space. But Tanaka kept pushing forward. The Valethians had never seen humans fight like this. In previous border skirmishes, human ships had been cautious. They had preserved their forces. They had retreated when the odds were bad. This was different. This was a ship that did not care if it died, as long as it took enemies with it. The Relentless fired every weapon at point-blank range. Missiles streaked across the gap in seconds. Railgun rounds punched through Valethian shields. The enemy flagship's bridge exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Then the rest of Webb's fleet arrived from hyperspace, right in the middle of the Valethian formation. It was a tactic that should have been impossible. Ships needed distance to safely exit hyperspace. Coming out so close to other vessels risked collision, radiation exposure, and a dozen other dangers. But Webb had calculated that surprise was worth the risk. And he was right. The Valethians panicked. Half their ships tried to retreat. The other half tried to regroup. They did neither well. Human ships tore into them with concentrated fire. The battle lasted 22 minutes. When ended, 34 Velethian warships were dead in space. 6 escaped. They carried tales of humans who fought like they welcomed death. Across the front lines, similar stories spread. Human pilots rammed their fighters into Velethian cruisers when they ran out of missiles. Human marines boarded enemy ships and fought hand-to-hand in the corridors, refusing to retreat even when outnumbered. Human colony defenders would booby-trap their own homes, sacrificing everything to take their attackers with them. The Velethians began to realize they had made a terrible mistake. Lieutenant James Kovac sat in a prison cell on Nexus Station, listening to the sounds of war through the walls. The station shook every few hours when human warships attacked Velethian supply convoys nearby. He had been here for weeks. The Velethians had tried to interrogate him, but he told them nothing. They had beaten him. He stayed silent. They had threatened him with worse. He had simply smiled and said, "You already did your worst. You shot Commander Chun in the back. Nothing you do to me matters now." Then one night, the door to his cell exploded inward. A figure in black armor stepped through the smoke. The armor had no insignia, no markings. Just black plates and a dark helmet. "Lieutenant Kovac?" A voice asked through the helmet speaker. "Who's asking?" Kovac croaked. His throat was dry from lack of water. "Sergeant First Class Andre Bishop. Human Special Forces. We're getting you out." Kovac almost cried. He had thought he would die here. They had all thought they would die here. But humanity had not forgotten them. Bishop and his team moved through the station like ghosts. They killed Velethian guards without making a sound. They hacked security systems. They freed Kovac and the 2 other surviving human diplomats. Then Bishop did something unexpected. He stopped at a computer terminal. "What are you doing?" Kovac asked. "We need to leave before they realize we're gone." "Getting information," Bishop replied. His fingers moved over the alien keyboard. He had learned their language just for this mission. "Your escape is secondary. The intel is primary." Kovac stared at him. "I'm secondary?" "You're a bonus," Bishop said without looking up. "The mission is to learn how they planned this. We need to know if other species were involved. We need their communication codes, fleet positions, supply lines, everything." He finished downloading the data onto a small drive. Then they moved again, heading for the station's docking bay. Alarms finally started wailing. Velethian soldiers rushed toward them. Bishop's team set up a defensive position and held it long enough for Kovac and the diplomats to reach the escape shuttle. "You're not coming?" Kovac asked as Bishop pushed him toward the shuttle door. "Someone has to make sure you get away," Bishop said. He smiled behind his helmet. Kovac could not see it, but he could hear it in the man's voice. "Besides, I'm not done yet. They have a command center on level 7. I think I'll visit it before I leave." The shuttle launched with Kovac and the diplomats inside. Behind them, explosions rocked the station. Bishop and his team were making the Velethians pay for every meter of corridor. 3 hours later, another human ship picked up a stealth pod floating in space. Bishop was inside, wounded but alive. He had blown up the command center and stolen 3 more data cores on his way out. The information he brought back changed everything. Admiral Webb read the decoded files in his ready room. The Velethians had not acted alone. They had consulted with their allies. They had debated the plan for months. The decision to kill Sarah Chun had been approved at the highest levels of their government. It was not one rogue officer. It was policy. More importantly, the files showed the Velethian strategy. They had expected humans to surrender after 3 months of fighting. They had calculated that humanity would be willing to accept harsh peace terms rather than lose more lives. They had believed that humans valued individual lives too much to commit to total war. Webb read that part twice. Then he laughed. It was not a happy sound. The Velethians had confused human morality with weakness. They thought because humans cared about casualties, humans would not accept casualties. They did not understand that humans could care deeply about every single death and still be willing to die by the thousands for a cause they believed in. Webb forwarded the intelligence to his fleet commanders with a simple message. They expected us to quit. They expect us to break. Show them they were wrong. Human forces began to adapt. Engineers studied captured Velethian technology and found weaknesses. The Velethians had better shields, yes, but those shields used a specific frequency that could be disrupted with modified human electronic warfare. Their plasma weapons were powerful, but they required a charging cycle that left a brief window for counterattack. Within 2 months, human ships were using these weaknesses. They would send electronic warfare drones ahead of their fleets, disrupting Velethian shields. They would coordinate their attacks to strike during the enemy's charging cycles. They learned. They adapted. They improved. The Velethians, for all their technology, had not fought a real war in generations. They had dominated their region through superior equipment and numbers. They did not know how to fight an enemy that learned from every battle and came back angrier than before. Captain Tanaka survived the Ross 128 battle. Her ship did not. She transferred to a new vessel, the Unforgiving, and continued hunting Velethian fleets. She kept a picture of her brother in her command chair. Every time she ordered her ship into battle, she touched that picture. Sergeant Bishop recovered from his wounds and went back into the field. He led 3 more rescue missions and 24 raids on Velethian installations. He never smiled anymore, except when he was about to blow something up. Lieutenant Kovac refused to return to Earth. Instead, he joined military intelligence. He knew the Velethian language now. He knew how they thought. He helped decode their communications and predict their movements. He made himself useful in the war effort because he had been there when Sarah Chun died. He had seen her eyes as the life left them. He would not let that mean nothing. The Velethians tried to open negotiations again. They sent messages offering to discuss terms. Webb ignored everyone. They sent neutral species to mediate. Webb told them all the same thing. We tried peace. They shot our diplomat in the back. Now, they faced the consequences. The war ground on. Human forces pushed deeper into Velethian space. Every battle cost lives on both sides, but the humans kept coming. They had learned something about themselves in this war. They had learned that they could be as ruthless as any species in the galaxy when betrayed. They had learned that their preference for peace was a choice, not a limitation. And they had learned that the galaxy would remember what happened to those who shot humans in the back. 6 months after Sarah Chen's death, Admiral Webb's fleet reached the edge of Velethian core territory. Behind them lay a trail of conquered space stations, destroyed military bases, and broken Velethian fleets. The war that was supposed to last 3 months had turned into humanity's relentless march toward the heart of the enemy's empire. High Commander Zareth stood in his command center on the planet Valeth Prime, the capital world of the Collective. He watched the tactical displays with growing horror. Red markers showed human fleet positions. They were everywhere. What had started as a few isolated task forces had become a massive invasion fleet that outnumbered his remaining ships. How had this happened? The Velethians had started with technological superiority and 3 times as many warships. Now they were losing badly. Sir, another message from the Turanian delegation, his communications officer reported. The Turanians were one of the 3 species that made up the Velethian Collective. They're formally requesting that we accept human peace terms. There are no peace terms, Zareth said coldly. The humans refuse to negotiate. Then perhaps we should surrender unconditionally. Zareth turned to look at the officer. His forearms tensed with anger. "We are the Valethian Collective. We do not surrender." But even as he said it, he knew the words were hollow. The collective was fracturing. The Terranians wanted out of the war. The Seskian delegation had stopped sending troops to the front lines. Only his own people, the true Valethians, still fought with full commitment. And they were dying in numbers that terrified him. The humans were supposed to break. They were supposed to value peace and individual lives above all else. Instead, they had become something else entirely. Something that did not seem to care about casualties as long as they kept moving forward. Something that learned from every battle and came back stronger. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Righteous Fury, through the forward viewports. He could see the asteroid field that marked the boundary of Valethian core space. Beyond it lay 6 inhabited worlds, including Valeth Prime. This was the moment he had been working toward for half a year. "Admiral, we're receiving multiple communication requests from the Valethian Command," his communications officer reported. "They're asking to discuss terms of peace." "Ignore them," Webb said simply. "Sir, they're using every frequency. They're even broadcasting through neutral channels. The Galactic Council is asking us to at least listen to what they have to say." Webb turned to face his crew. Every officer on the bridge had lost someone in this war. They all understood what was at stake. They had their chance for peace, Webb said. His voice was calm but final. Commander Chun offered them peace. They shot her in the back. They declared war on us while pretending to negotiate. They attacked our colonies while we trusted their word. Now they want to talk because they're losing. The answer is no. He looked back at the view screen. We offered our hand. They chose to cut it off. Now they face the consequences of that choice. The fleet moved forward into Valethian space. 63 human warships, representing every class from destroyers to battleships. Behind them, supply ships and troop transports followed. This was not a raid. This was an invasion. The Valethians had assembled their last reserve fleet to defend their core worlds. 200 warships pulled from every corner of their territory. It was everything they had left. They positioned themselves in the asteroid field, using the massive rocks for cover. It was a good defensive position. Captain Tanaka commanded the Unforgiving as part of Webb's vanguard. Her sensors showed the Valethian fleet hiding in the asteroids. It was the smart move. The asteroids would protect them from long-range fire and make it hard for human ships to maneuver. They're learning, Tanaka said to her first officer. They're using tactics instead of just relying on superior numbers. Too late for them to start learning, the first officer replied. Tanaka smiled. It was a cold expression. Much too late. Webb ordered the fleet to advance slowly, as if cautious about the asteroids. The Valethians watched them come. They prepared to spring their trap. They would wait until the human ships were deep in the field, unable to maneuver easily, and then attack from all sides. It was a good plan. It might have worked against the humans from 6 months ago. But humans learned fast. When the fleet was halfway into the asteroid field, Webb gave a single command: execute Hammer Protocol. 20 human ships that had been hanging back suddenly fired their engines at full power. But they did not head into the asteroids. They went around them, using precise hyperspace micro-jumps to appear on the far side of the field. Behind the Valethian fleet. At the same time, the ships in the asteroid field launched thousands of drones. Small, fast objects that the Valethians had thought were just debris were sensor ghosts. The drones activated and began painting Valethian ships with targeting lasers. The trap had been reversed. All ships weapons-free, Webb commanded. Concentrate fire on flagged targets. The battle turned into chaos. Valethian ships tried to turn to face the threat behind them, But the asteroids that had protected them now blocked their movement. The ships that tried to escape the field ran into the human vessels waiting there. The ships that stayed in place became easy targets for the human ships attacking from the front. Tanaka's unforgiving focused its fire on a Valethian heavy cruiser. The enemy ship's shields absorbed the first volley, but human weapons had been modified with the knowledge stolen from captured technology. The second volley penetrated the shields. The third volley cracked the hull. The fourth volley found the reactor. The cruiser exploded in a flash of purple energy. Tanaka did not pause to watch. She was already targeting the next ship. On Valeth Prime, Zareth watched his fleet die. The tactical display showed red markers blinking out one by one. His reserve fleet, his last hope, was being destroyed. In less than an hour, the humans had shattered a force that should have held them back for months. "Get me a communication line to the human flagship," he ordered. "Direct channel. I will speak to their commander." His officers rushed to comply. A minute later, Admiral Webb's face appeared on the screen. The human looked older than he had in the intelligence photos. Tired, but his eyes were hard as iron. "Hi, Commander Zareth," Webb said. It was not a greeting, just an acknowledgement. "Admiral Webb, I am requesting a ceasefire to discuss terms of peace." "No." Zareth felt something close to panic. He forced it down. "Admiral, please. We can end this. We can negotiate. We can find a solution that benefits both our peoples." Webb leaned forward slightly. "You killed Commander Sarah Chun during a peace ceremony. You shot her in the back while she smiled and trusted you. You attacked our colonies without warning. You thought we would break. You thought we would surrender. You were wrong. There is nothing to negotiate. Then what do you want?" Zareth asked. He could hear the desperation in his own voice. "What will it take for you to stop?" "Your unconditional surrender," Webb said. "Every Valethian warship will stand down immediately. Your worlds will accept human occupation forces. The individuals responsible for planning and executing the assassination of Commander Chun will be turned over for trial and punishment. Your government will be dissolved and reformed under human supervision. You will pay reparations for every human life lost. You will accept complete demilitarization. And you will do all of this without conditions or debate." Zareth's forearms trembled. "That is not peace. That is humiliation. That is the end of the Valethian collective." "Yes," Webb agreed. "It is you had peace. We offered it freely. You chose treachery instead. This is what comes after treachery." The screen went dark. Webb had ended the transmission dot in the asteroid field. The battle was ending. 40 Valethian ships managed to retreat. The rest were destroyed or disabled. Human forces regrouped and began moving toward Valeth Prime. Zareth stood alone in his command center. His officers watched him, waiting for orders. He had no orders to give. The humans were coming. They would not stop. They would not negotiate. They would accept nothing less than total surrender. He thought about the moment he had given, the order to kill the human diplomat. It had seemed so simple then. Remove their leader. Strike fast. Force their surrender. It was supposed to work. Every analysis had said it would work, but the analyses had been wrong. The humans had not broken. They had become something worse than any warrior species the Valethians had ever faced. They had become an enemy that would not stop until they had complete victory. Zareth accessed his personal terminal and began typing a message to the other members of the collective leadership. It was time to accept reality. They had lost. The war was over. All that remained was to face the consequences of shooting a human in the back. Outside, human ships filled the sky above Valeth Prime like dark metal stars. They did not fire. They simply waited. Their message was clear: surrender or be destroyed. There would be no third option. The Valethian Collective had 48 hours to choose. The Valethian Collective surrendered 37 hours after Admiral Webb's fleet arrived at Valeth Prime. High Commander Zareth transmitted the surrender personally, his forearms held in a position that meant defeat in his culture. There were no conditions, no negotiations, just complete and total surrender. Human forces occupied the Valethian homeworlds within a week. Marines in black armor stood guard outside government buildings. Human ships patrolled the space lanes. Valethian military vessels were ordered to a single location, where they were systematically disarmed and disabled. The war had lasted 14 months. It had cost 40,000 human lives and over 2 million Valethian lives. It had changed the balance of power in the entire region of space. And it had taught the galaxy a lesson about what happened when someone betrayed humanity's trust. Lieutenant James Kovac stood in a courtroom on Valeth Prime, 3 months after the surrender. The room was filled with representatives from a dozen species. Human judges sat behind a raised bench. In the center of the room, in a reinforced containment field, stood the Valethian officer who had shot Sarah Chun. His name was Velther. He was a junior officer who had followed orders. He had pulled the trigger, but he had not given the command. Still, he was the one who had physically killed her, and he would be the first to face justice. Kovac had been asked to testify. He was the only human survivor who had been on that platform when Sarah died. He described what he had seen. The signing of the treaty. Sarah turning away with a smile. The flash of green plasma. The way she had looked at him as she died, confused and betrayed. The courtroom was silent when he finished. Even the Valethian observers looked uncomfortable. The judges deliberated for less than an hour. They found Velther guilty of war crimes, murder during a diplomatic ceremony, and crimes against sentient rights. The sentence was death. Velther was executed by firing squad 2 days later. Kovac attended the execution. He did not enjoy it. He took no pleasure in watching the Valethian die. But he felt that someone who had been there when Sarah died should be there when her killer faced justice. After Velther, there were more trials. The other soldiers who had helped plan the assassination. The commanders who had given the orders. The government officials who had approved the strategy. One by one, they faced human justice. Some were executed. Some were imprisoned for life. None escaped punishment. High Commander Zareth was the last to be tried. He stood in the containment field and listened as the charges were read. Genocide. Crimes against humanity. Violation of diplomatic immunity. War crimes. The list went on for 20 minutes. Zareth did not deny anything. He confirmed that he had given the orders. He had planned the assassination. He had believed it was the right strategy to secure Valethian dominance. He had been wrong. I believed humans were weak, Zareth said when given a chance to speak. I believed that you valued individual lives so much that you would surrender rather than accept losses. I was wrong. I understand that now. You are not weak. You are simply patient. You prefer peace, but you are very good at war when forced into it. The judges found him guilty. The sentence was death, but before the execution, Admiral Webb came to see him in his cell. It was not an official visit. Webb dismissed the guards and sat across from the former High Commander in silence for a moment. "Why are you here?" Zareth asked. "I wanted to understand," Webb said quietly. "Why did you do it? You could have had peace. Real peace. Commander Chun was willing to give you everything reasonable. Why throw that away?" Zareth's large black eyes studied the human. "Because we did not believe peace with humans could last. You are too aggressive. Too expansionist. We thought it better to break you now, while we still had advantage, than to wait and fight you later when you were stronger. So you shot her in the back because you feared us?" "Yes, And in doing so, we created exactly what we feared. We turned your peaceful diplomat into a martyr. We turned your restraint into rage. We taught you that we could not be trusted. We made you into the enemy we imagined you were. Webb stood up slowly. You're right about one thing. You created an enemy, but not because we wanted to be one, because you forced us to be one. We would have kept the peace. We would have honored that treaty. You chose this. He walked to the door, then paused and looked back. Commander Chun was my student. She believed in peace more than anyone I knew. She died believing in it. I hope you think about that in your last moments. Zareth was executed the next morning. Webb did not attend. Across Valethian space, the occupation continued. It was not cruel, but it was firm. Humans rebuilt damaged infrastructure. They established new governments with representatives from all three species of the collective. They set up monitoring stations to ensure no secret military buildup occurred. They collected reparations, though much of the money was used to help the Valethian, civilians who had suffered during the war. The galaxy watched all of this with careful attention. Human behavior during the occupation surprised many species. There were no massacres, no torture, no cruel revenge beyond the legal executions of those directly responsible for war crimes. Humans were stern occupiers, but fair ones. On Earth, a monument was erected at the Diplomatic Academy where Sarah Chun had trained. It was a simple black stone with her name and the names of every human who had died in the war. The inscription read, "They came in peace." They were answered with treachery. They responded with justice. Below that, a second inscription, "We prefer peace, but we will never accept betrayal." The monument became a place where new diplomats came to reflect. It reminded them that peace was precious, but that some lines could never be crossed without consequence. Captain Yuki Tanaka retired from the military after the occupation, stabilized. She returned to Earth and opened a school for young officers. She taught them tactics and strategy, but she also taught them about Sarah Chun, about what happened when someone mistook humanity's preference for peace as inability to wage war. Sergeant Andre Bishop stayed in Special Forces. He led peacekeeping missions across the former Valethian territory. He trained local security forces. He helped rebuild trust between humans and the alien populations. He was good at it, though he never smiled much anymore. Lieutenant Kovac became a diplomat. It surprised everyone who knew him, but he felt it was important. Sarah Chun had died trying to make peace. Someone needed to carry on that work. He was careful, though. He never trusted easily. He always had Marines nearby. He never forgot what happened when you let your guard down. Admiral Webb retired 2 years after the war ended. He gave a final speech to the graduating class at the military academy. The room was packed with young officers eager to hear from the man who had won the Valethian War. "You've all heard stories about this war," Webb said. "About the battles, about the victory. But I want you to understand what the war was really about. It was about trust. Commander Chun trusted the Valethians. She believed they wanted peace as much as she did. She was wrong. They killed her for that trust." He paused and looked across the young faces watching him. "But here's what I need you to remember. She was right to trust. Peace requires trust. Diplomacy requires good faith. We cannot build a better galaxy if we assume everyone is an enemy." Commander Chun did the right thing by believing in peace. Someone in the audience raised a hand. "Then how do we protect ourselves, sir? If we trust, won't we be betrayed again?" Webb nodded. "Maybe. Probably. The galaxy is full of species with different values and goals. Some will honor their agreements. Some won't. But here's what the Valethians learned, and what every species needs to understand. Humanity will always offer peace first. We will negotiate. We will compromise. We will extend trust." His expression hardened. "But if you betray that trust, if you shoot us in the back, if you mistake our preference for peace as weakness, then you will face consequences. We will not forget. We will not forgive. And we will show you exactly what humans are capable of when we stop holding back." The room was silent. "We are not a warrior species," Webb continued. "We are not conquerors. We are builders and dreamers and diplomats. But we are also survivors. And we will do whatever it takes to protect our people and punish those who harm us. That is the lesson the Vilithians learned. Let that lesson spread to every species in the galaxy. Come to us in peace, and we will be your friends. Come to us in treachery, and we will be your doom." He finished his speech and left the stage to thunderous applause. Years passed. The occupied Vilithian worlds slowly regained their independence under the watchful eyes of human observers. The reparations were paid. The demilitarization was enforced. A new generation of Vilithians grew up knowing that humans had defeated them utterly, but had not destroyed them. The lesson was clear. Humans could be terrible enemies, but they were not cruel victors. Other species in the galaxy noticed. When disputes arose with human colonies or ships, they remembered the Vilithian War. They remembered what happened to those who betrayed humanity's trust. Most chose to negotiate fairly. A few tested humanity's resolve and learned the same lesson the Vilithians had. On Nexus Station, where it had all begun, a new memorial was erected. It stood on the exact spot where Sarah Chun had died. The memorial showed her in her diplomatic uniform, hand extended in greeting.